I lived and studied and worked in 3 different countries. I also have experience of going through the whole kind of UK application. I didn't have a mentor when I was applying. I had to do all of that by myself.
Hello, everyone. If you want to find out more about efficient ways of studying, you're in the right place. I'm Matylda. I'm a student in JDJ IOS, and today I'm hosting Maja, our new mentor for students interested in studying in UK. Good morning, Maja. I'm so happy to have you here, and please tell me more about yourself.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Maya. I'm one of the new mentors at JDJ IOS. I live in the UK, so the reason why I'm joining JDJ is so that I can kind of give a bit more of an insight into what it's like to be applying to universities abroad. So I moved to the UK nearly 13 years ago. I studied Chinese and cultural studies for my undergraduate degree, and then I studied Masters in Corporate Communications, Public Relations and Marketing. Both of them were at a UK university. I'm joining to kind of be able to give a bit more insight into that. And yeah, I'm currently working as the project manager for a pension fund, and I'm really excited to start mentoring at JDJ.
For how long have you been living in UK right now?
Nearly 13 years, so like 12 and a half years or so.
So that's a very long time. So could you tell me more about your decision that brought you here, not just personally, but also because of the education?
To be honest, as long as I remember, I kind of wanted to study abroad. I think at the time I didn't really know where, but I always like languages and I like learning about different cultures, etc. And I visited the UK a couple of years before I was due to apply for university, and I guess I kind of fell in love with it a little bit. I was there with my parents and my brother, and we kind of visited a lot of very charming places. We of course were in London, but we also went to Oxford and Bath and Brighton, etc. And I just really enjoyed it. The UK has some of the best universities in Europe, so that was definitely also one of my considerations. When it comes to kind of staying afterwards, in all honesty, I don't think I put too much thought into it. I think I just enjoyed my university experience and I wasn't really ready to leave, so I decided to stay afterwards. So yeah.
That sounds great. I'm glad that you mentioned that you fell in love with UK, because I think that your role is very important, that you have this aspect, because since you joined the JDJ IOS as a mentor to help students studying in UK, I'm very happy to hear that you're very passionate about it. So can you tell me more about how you see yourself in this community and what inspired you to join?
I've got some previous mentoring experience. It was kind of very different because I mentored a student that was at university at the time. So it was more kind of like a career mentoring. She was an international student who just kind of came to do her masters in the UK and then was looking for a job afterwards. But I think the premise of mentoring is the same, regardless of whether it's a career mentoring or university or like student mentoring. And yeah, I also have experience of going through the whole kind of UK application process as an international student. And it's definitely quite different to a kind of Polish university application process. I think there is, especially as an international student, there is just a few more steps you have to go through. I didn't have a mentor when I was applying. I had to do all of that by myself. And I think it's definitely easier when you've got someone who's done it, that you can kind of bounce ideas off and you can kind of make sure that you're on the right track. I lived and studied and worked in 3 different countries. I feel like I can definitely give a kind of good guidance on what it's like to be an expat and the whole kind of cultural adaptation process, etc.
Because of your experience, you definitely notice lots of differences between the 2 education systems, the UK one and the Polish one. So can you please expand it a bit more about the differences that you notice, any key features that you enjoy in the UK system especially?
I never went to university in Poland, just to kind of be clear there. So I can't kind of cover differences between like a Polish university and a British university, but I can definitely kind of compare my education in like primary school and high school versus the UK education that I had at university. I think in Poland there's this kind of very big emphasis on just memorizing, and I would say the education system, or kind of how it works, is a lot less flexible. The kind of teaching and learning is a lot less flexible, and there is this kind of premise that teacher is always right. And I feel like at a university in the UK, there's a lot more kind of focus on independent analysis and critical thinking, and students are, allowed to express their opinions, as long as they've got they can do their kind of research and they've got facts to back them up. I think, of course, if you're studying kind of like a more scientific, it's a lot more kind of scientific, so you don't have that opportunity to be like expressing your own opinions, because it's more about science, etc. But when you're studying a more kind of like a cultural or a business type of degree, then you definitely have the ability to express yourself more and stuff. And yeah, I think that's kind of what's great about what JDJ offers to students, is that you kind of get that experience beforehand. So if you do decide to study abroad, it's not as much of like a cultural shock when you have to kind of learn all of that. Because when I first came to uni, it took me a while to kind of switch my brain to do critical thinking and to kind of so
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's what JDJ puts a big highlight on, and I see that in myself as well, because this is my second year in the online American high school, and I also did a year in US for my exchange year, and I really noticed the things that you also mentioned in the UK education, more flexibility and deduction instead of just memorizing everything. And I have a great example with me studying right now for my AP exams. I'm taking US history class, and I'm comparing it to Polish matura from history as well. And I noticed between me and my Polish friends that I study more about why something happened and how does it relate to our history, instead of just blindly memorizing the people and the dates. So I'm glad you also noticed that, and you see how big of a difference it makes in the future. So as we're talking about it, there's also some formalities to the studying abroad, of course, which often puts people away from it because they're very scared of it. But can you tell us about the essential documents that a person would need if they plan on studying in UK?
When you're applying, you do have to have a relevant kind of a diploma. So whether it's an IB diploma or, well, A levels is the UK equivalent. In Poland, you've got matura. You can apply with kind of any relevant diploma. I would say probably the IB ones are slightly easier to process recalculate the points, etc. But I applied with a matura and it was fine, so you can definitely do that as well. There is a little bit more to it when it comes to the applications though, so you have to do a personal statement. Within the personal statement, the student is meant to, you're definitely talking about your kind of subject and your kind of experience at school, etc. But you do focus a lot more also on just kind of showcasing your passion for the subject. And just you're required, or you're kind of supposed to talk a little bit more about like your hobbies and your extracurricular activities, and just kind of showing that you're passionate and why you want to do this, rather than just saying like, oh, I studied this and this, so that's why I now want to study this at university. You do also have to take an English language exam. So I took an IELTS exam. You also, some universities, after you've applied, they will do admission tests or interviews. Not many universities do that though. It's mainly kind of Cambridge or Oxford type of places that do it. And then you will also have to get a student visa once you're accepted. It is just something to highlight as well, is that because the application process here is a little bit different to the one in Poland, you do end up having to apply either before you even sit your matura exam or before you get the results. It's one or the other, but you definitely apply before you have your results. So you will, if you are accepted, you will end up getting a conditional offer where they essentially tell you that you will get an unconditional offer if you get like this and this grade on your exam. And then when you get the results, you send them the results and they send you the unconditional offer. So process.
Yeah, I'm sure this is the thing that stresses out the most people, just all of the documents and everything, just like feeling like it never ends, right? But we cannot forget that there's more to it than just studying. There's also the living part. And for now, I would like to just quickly ask you a couple questions about living in UK, and we'll expand that topic in the next video, the part 2 of this interview. So for now, please tell me, how does the everyday life look like in UK? I know that you cannot really tell us about the experience of college in Poland, but I think that the viewers can compare it with what they know based on what you're gonna tell us.
I think something that really surprised me about UK universities when I first moved here was how much of a kind of social experience it is. When you first move here, the university kind of organizes a lot of different social events for people to kind of, for different students to meet each other, and you do end up meeting a lot of very kind of like-minded people. And then there's also just a kind of big emphasis on that kind of throughout the whole of university. There is, as a student, you can take part in different kind of clubs and societies, and those societies are essentially these kind of student-led groups that organize themselves around their interests. So you can have for example, I don't know, like a Pilates society or a rugby society, more kind of scientific or to do with the subjects. So let's say like maths or something like that. So it's kind of anything that you want, really. So for example, I was part of an entrepreneurship society, and I also wrote for a student magazine while I was doing my master's. So so there's kind of, it's a great way to kind of meet people, but then it's also a really good way to kind of, I guess, like improve your CV when it does come to applying for jobs, because you can get just really great experience through it.
Can you also shortly tell me about the housing? Because I know this is often a big issue for new students to find it. So can you tell me if it's affordable, if it's actually easy or hard to get? Just please tell me that.
Sure. So I would say it's fair. There's a lot of student housing available, so it's definitely easy to find something. When it comes to affordability, I think it depends on what city you choose to go to. London, for example, will end up being a lot more expensive than if you were to study in, for example, Newcastle. I studied in Newcastle, which is up north, and it's a lot further. It's quite far from London. So I would say that flats there are a lot more affordable. You can choose between kind of like a private or a university accommodation. The private accommodation is cheaper, but what a lot of students do is that in the first year they go into halls of residence, which is the university accommodation, and it's essentially just so that they can meet people, and it's more kind of, and then once you make your friends in your first year, then you kind of go and look for private accommodation together. So you'd usually kind of live in a house, everyone has their own room.
Yes, great. So besides housing, I know that thing that concerns a lot of people is working. So do you think it's possible, not only allowed, but if it's possible time-wise to actually have a part-time job? And have you ever worked a part-time job as a student in college?
Yes, I did. I worked part-time jobs throughout most of university, to be honest. A lot of students do. You are allowed to, because of Brexit, EU students do have to have a student visa, but the student visa does allow students to work, I think it's up to 20 hours per week when you're studying full-time. But then outside of term, you are allowed to do kind of like fixed-term full-time contracts. So when you like break up for example, Christmas, and there's like a month off, or over the summer there's, I think, 3 months off, you are allowed to kind of work full-time between the terms, if that makes sense. A lot of students do just kind of casual jobs, like waiting or bar staff or like retail jobs. When I was doing my master's, I worked through a university student union where they were organizing a lot of different kind of events at university, and they needed people to work at those events.
And for the last part of the living in UK, can you please tell me more about the real cost of living? Because they might be different that we expect. So can you share your experience?
Sure. So yeah, I think it's a bit kind of hard to give people a very kind of specific number without knowing what university they want to go to, where they want to live in, because the living cost in London will be a lot higher than if you were to kind of go and study in, let's say, Leeds or somewhere kind of far away from London. So it does differ based on the place you choose to go to. But then there is, I think, a big thing that people need to consider is tuition fees. So when I came to university, that was pre-Brexit, so I was allowed to get tuition fee loans, and that's not possible for EU students anymore. So it is something that everyone who's applying will need to consider. So yeah, I think this kind of differs depending on what city people want to live in, what kind of like family support they have, if they're willing to work part-time, and there are also scholarships available. So I got a scholarship for my master's degree, so that's definitely possible as well. So I guess we can go into that into a little bit more detail next time we talk. But yeah, it's very dependent on very many factors, I suppose. So,
yeah, I think that's what you can help people with, right? That people that are applying to go to college in UK that are not sure about the cost of living, you're the real life example of what exactly people need, not just the things that they heard of, right? So I'm happy that you're here to help people out. And yes, we will expand on the day-to-day life in a different video. So if you're interested, please watch it later on. And for the last question in this interview, do you have any words to the students that are dreaming and planning on studying in UK but are not 100% sure? Do you have anything to motivate them?
If someone wants to do it and they have the means to do it, I think they definitely should. I absolutely loved my experience at university, and I'm really happy I did it. I think even whether you only want to come to the UK just to go to university, or you're hoping to kind of move here more long term, I think UK universities are definitely still kind of very highly regarded abroad. So it's definitely a kind of a big bonus in terms of employability, etc. in the future. But yeah, I think also just the student experience is very different to what I was kind of used to beforehand. And I absolutely loved it. I think there are so many different things you can get involved in. And yeah, I think it was great. And if someone wants to do it, they definitely should.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, Maya, today. I'm very excited to see you work for JDJ IOS and help our students. And like I said before, this is not the end of the conversation. This is just the part one. The part two will focus more on the day-to-day life that we briefly discussed today. But thank you so much for now, and thank you for your time here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be joining JDJ.
Thank you. So this is the end for today. Thank you so much for watching, and please stay tuned for part two.